Before we begin the story, let us know where you're watching from by leaving a comment below. If you enjoy this video, don't forget to like and subscribe. Have a wonderful day. Enjoy the story, everyone. James Hart adjusted his tie for the third time in as many minutes, his reflection in the elevator's polished steel doors showing the strain of another sleepless night. Dark circles shadowed his hazel eyes, evidence of hours spent reviewing merger documents that could transform his tech company. At 35, he'd built an empire from nothing. But this morning felt more crucial than any business deal. "Daddy, you look handsome," came a sweet voice from beside his knee. James's expression softened as he looked down at his 8-year-old daughter, Lily. Her auburn curls bounced as she beamed up at him, her mother's amber eyes bright with excitement. She wore her new uniform, a crisp white blouse and navy skirt that made her seem far too mature for his comfort. "Not as beautiful as you, princess," he murmured, kneeling to straighten her collar. His hands trembled slightly, not from caffeine, but from the weight of this milestone. First day at Crestwood Academy, another moment he'd have to navigate alone. The elevator chimed, and they stepped into the marble lobby of his penthouse building. James's phone buzzed, insistent, probably his assistant with reminders about the board meeting that would determine his company's future. But right now, nothing mattered more than ensuring Lily felt secure on her first day. "Are you nervous, sweetheart?" he asked as they settled into his black Mercedes. Lily shook her head, though he noticed how tightly she gripped her new backpack. "Will you pick me up today?" "I promise," James said, though anxiety tightened his chest. The merger meeting was scheduled until 6, but he'd move mountains to keep his word. He'd already missed too much time with Lily in the 3 years since Sarah died. Work had been his refuge from grief, but lately he wondered if he was hiding from life itself. The GPS guided them through unfamiliar streets as James's mind wandered to the morning's chaos. Between Lily's breakfast tantrum over her hair ribbon and his conference call with Singapore investors, he'd barely managed to grab the school paperwork. The prestigious Crestwood Academy promised excellence as all classes, individual attention, everything a devoted father wanted for his daughter. "This doesn't look right," James muttered. Pulling up to a modest brick building with colorful playground equipment and a hand-painted sign reading Roosevelt Elementary, this couldn't be Crestwood Academy with its ivy-covered walls and manicured grounds. But Lily was already bouncing in her seat. "It looks fun, Daddy. Look at the rainbow on the door." James checked his watch. 7:45 a.m. He was already cutting it close for his meeting, and navigating to the correct school would make him impossibly late. A glance at the cheerful building made his decision. How different could one day be? "All right, princess, let's go meet your teacher." The moment they stepped through those rainbow-painted doors, James's world shifted completely. The hallway buzzed with children's laughter and morning energy. Crayon drawings covered every wall, and the air carried scents of apple juice and possibility. But it wasn't the atmosphere that stopped James cold, it was her. She knelt in the hallway center, comforting a crying first grader with infinite patience. Her warm brown skin seemed to glow in the morning light streaming through tall windows, and when she looked up at their footsteps, James forgot how to breathe. Her eyes met his across the crowded space, and time seemed to pause. Deep brown eyes, warm and intelligent, widened in surprise. She was stunning in a way that made his chest ache, not just physically, though her curves filled out her simple sundress perfectly. But something deeper, there was a warmth about her that called to places in his heart he thought died with Sarah. "Can I help you?" she asked, rising gracefully. Her voice was honey-rich, with just a hint of weariness, as she took in his expensive suit and obvious wealth. James found himself speechless, absorbing everything about her. The way she tucked a natural curl behind her ear, the gentleness she'd shown the crying child, the protective way she now positioned herself between him and her students. "Daddy." Lily tugged on his hand, breaking the spell. Sorry." James cleared his throat, his composure returning though his pulse still raced. "I'm James Hart. This is my daughter, Lily. It's her first day." The beautiful teacher he desperately wanted to know her name looked puzzled. "I'm sorry, but I don't have a Lily on my class list." "Are you sure you're in the right place?" "Crestwood Academy," James said, though doubt was already creeping in. A smile tugged at her lips, transforming her face from merely beautiful to absolutely radiant. "This is Roosevelt Elementary. Crestwood Academy is across town, about 20 minutes in morning traffic." Heat flooded James's cheeks. "I'm such an idiot. I'm sorry. We'll just Daddy. Can I stay here?" Lily interrupted, having already spotted the art station with its rainbow of finger paints. "Please, It looks more fun than my old school. Sweetheart, you can't just... Actually, the teacher interjected, her expression softening as she looked at Lily. If you need to get to work, she could stay until you sort things out. I'm Maya Ellis, and I teach second grade. We're doing finger painting this morning, and we always have room for one more artist. Mayatha name fit her perfectly, musical and warm. I couldn't ask you to, James began. You're not asking. I'm offering. Maya knelt to Lily's level, and James's heart did something dangerous at the tenderness in her voice. Would you like to paint with us, Lily? I bet you could teach us a thing or two about colors. Lily practically vibrated with excitement. Can I, Daddy, please? James looked at his watch. 7:52 a.m. The merger meeting was at 9 o'clock. And he still needed to review contracts. Logic said to apologize and leave, to drive across town to the sterile halls of Crestwood Academy. But something in Maya's warm brown eyes made him hesitate. Are you sure it's not too much trouble? He asked, his gaze lingering on Maya's face. No trouble at all, she assured him, standing. When she smiled, James felt like he could conquer the world or maybe just forget about mergers and acquisitions for a few precious hours. I'll be back by 3, he promised, kneeling to hug Lily. She smelled like strawberry shampoo and childhood innocence, 2 things that had kept him anchored since Sarah's death. Have a good day at work, Daddy. Don't worry about me. As James stood, his hand brushed Maya's when she reached to take Lily's backpack. The contact sent electricity shooting up his arm, and from the way her breath caught, she felt it too. Their eyes met again, and for a moment, the bustling hallway faded away. Thank you, he said quietly, his voice rougher than intended. This means more than you know. Everyone deserves a soft place to land, Maya replied, and something in her tone suggested she knew about needing safe places. James forced himself to turn away, but he couldn't resist one last look back. Maya was already leading Lily toward the art station, her hand gentle on his daughter's shoulder. The sight of them together, his auburn-haired daughter and this magnificent woman, made his chest tight with an emotion he couldn't name. As he walked back to his car, James realized his hands weren't shaking from caffeine anymore. They were shaking from something far more dangerous. Hope. The merger meeting passed in a blur of legal jargon and financial projections, but James's mind kept wandering to warm brown eyes and the sound of Lily's laughter echoing through colorful halls. For the first time in 3 years, he found himself watching the clock, not because he wanted the day to end, but because he couldn't wait to see what or Wawa's waiting at 3 o'clock. He had no idea that a simple wrong turn would change everything, that in a humble school where children's art covered the walls and love filled every corner, he would find the missing piece of his heart he thought was lost forever. Some mistakes, James would later realize, were actually destiny in disguise. Chapter 2. Coffee and Confessions. 3 days had passed since James's accidental visit to Roosevelt Elementary, and he couldn't get Maya Ellis out of his head. Her laugh echoed through his thoughts, rich and genuine. Unlike the practiced sounds of women in his social circle, he found himself driving the long way to work, past the colorful brick building where she spent her days nurturing other people's children with the same tenderness she'd shown Lily. Daddy, you're staring at nothing again, Lily observed from across the breakfast table, her spoon hovering halfway to her mouth. James blinked, focusing on his daughter's concerned face. Sorry, Princess. Just thinking about work. It was a lie. He'd been thinking about the way Maya's sundress had hugged her curves, the gentle authority in her voice when she'd calmed that crying child, the spark that had passed between them when their hands touched. 3 days, and he felt like a teenager with his first crush, except this was infinitely more dangerous. This was a man who'd sworn never to risk his heart again, finding himself completely captivated by a woman he barely knew. James's pulse quickened. In 3 years, Lily had never shown this kind of enthusiasm about any teacher or caregiver. She does seem very special. Can we visit her to say thank you? Lily's amber eyes, so much like Sarah's, lit up with possibility. Maybe bring her coffee? You always say coffee makes everything better. Smart girl. James felt his pulse quicken at the thought of seeing Maya again. But he tried to keep his voice casual. That's actually a very thoughtful idea, sweetheart. What kind of coffee do you think Miss Maya likes? Something sweet, like her, Lily said with 8-year-old certainty. An hour later, James found himself standing outside Jolt Cafe, 3 blocks from Roosevelt Elementary. holding a carrier with 2 coffees and 1 hot chocolate. His hands trembled slightly, something that hadn't happened since he'd delivered his first major business presentation a decade ago. But this felt infinitely more important than any corporate deal. Through the cafe's large windows, he spotted her immediately. Maya sat at a corner table, her natural curls caught in the afternoon sunlight streaming through the glass. She was grading papers, her brow furrowed in concentration, unconsciously biting her lower lip in a way that made James's stomach flip. She wore a soft green cardigan over a white blouse, and even in her simple teacher clothes, she was the most beautiful woman he'd ever seen. "There she is," Lily squealed, already pushing through the cafe door before James could stop her. Maya looked up at the sound, and when her eyes found James's through the glass, that same electric current from 3 days ago sparked between them. Her face lit up with surprise and something that looked like pleasure before uncertainty crept in. "Lily, what a wonderful surprise," Maya said. Standing to accept the enthusiastic hug Lily threw around her waist. Over his daughter's head, her eyes met James's again. "And Mr. Hart." "James, please," he said, approaching their table with what he hoped looked like casual confidence rather than the desperate need to be near her that was actually driving him. "We brought you coffee," Lily insisted. "We needed to properly thank you for your kindness." "That's so sweet, but you really didn't need to." "Vanilla latte with extra foam?" Lily announced proudly. "Daddy asked the barista what teachers like, and she said vanilla lattes are perfect for nice people." Maya's laugh was even more beautiful than James' remembered musical, and warm enough to melt the last of his defenses. "Well, the barista was absolutely right. Vanilla lattes are my favorite." "Really?" James asked, settling into the chair across from her while Lily bounced into the seat beside Maya. "Lucky guess." "Very lucky," Maya agreed, and when she met his eyes, James felt that familiar electricity arc between them. For the next hour, conversation flowed as easily as honey. Lily chattered about her new school, Crestwood Academy, which she proclaimed nice but not as colorful as Miss Maya's school. James found himself relaxing in a way he hadn't since Sarah's death, drawn in by Maya's genuine interest in everything Lily said, and the way she occasionally glanced at him with something that looked like curiosity. "I should probably get these papers graded," Maya said eventually, though she made no move to gather her things. "Of course," James said. But neither of them moved to leave. Lily, with the intuition of children everywhere, suddenly announced she needed to use the restroom, leaving James and Maya alone at the table. The air between them shifted, becoming charged with unspoken possibilities. "She's incredible," Maya said softly, watching Lily skip toward the back of the cafe. "You've done an amazing job raising her." James's throat tightened. "I'm not sure about that. Most days, I feel like I'm barely keeping my head above water. It's been just the 2 of us for 3 years now, and sometimes I wonder if she's missing out on things I can't give her." Something flickered across Maya's face, understanding, maybe, or recognition. "What happened to her mother, if you don't mind me asking?" "Car accident," James said quietly, his hands tightening around his coffee cup. "Sarah was coming home from her book club on a rainy Thursday night. Some drunk driver ran a red light." He looked up to find Maya's eyes bright with unshed tears. "I'm sorry. I don't usually." "Don't apologize," Maya said quickly. "I can't imagine how difficult that must have been." "Still must be." James nodded, surprised by how easy it was to talk to her about this. Most people either offered empty platitudes or changed the subject as quickly as possible. "The hardest part is that I haven't felt alive since it happened. I go through the motions work, taking care of Lily, the basics of living, but I haven't really felt anything in 3 years." Until Maya asked softly, and James realized what he'd almost admitted. Their eyes met across the small table, and the truth hung between them like a bridge neither was quite ready to cross. "Until I walked into that elementary school and saw you comforting a child like you, had all the love in the world to give." "What about you?" James asked instead, deflecting from the dangerous territory they were approaching. "Are you married? Kids?" Maya's smile faltered, and she looked down at her hands wrapped around her coffee cup. "Divorced, 2 years now, no children," which was apparently part of the problem. "I'm sorry." "Don't be. Nathan did me a favor. Really, he left me for someone who could give him what he wanted, a wife who would quit her job to focus on making him look good. Someone who would prioritize his dreams over her own." Maya's voice was steady, but James caught the pain underneath. "Turns out, I'm not very good at making myself smaller to make someone else feel bigger. Any man who would ask you to make yourself smaller is an idiot." James said with such fierce conviction that Maya's head snapped up in surprise. "You don't even know me," she said. But there was wonder in her voice. "I know enough," James replied, his voice rougher than intended. "I know you dropped everything to help a stranger's child. I know you have the patience to calm crying kids and the talent to make finger painting feel like high art. I know you have the most beautiful laugh I've ever heard, and that when you smile, it feels like the sun coming out after a long winter." Maya's breath caught, and James realized he'd said too much, revealed too much of what she was doing to his carefully guarded heart. "James," she began. But whatever she was going to say was interrupted when she reached for sugar at the same moment he did. Their hands touched, just fingers brushing against fingers, but the contact sent shock waves through James's entire system. From the sharp intake of breath, he heard Maya felt it too. Neither of them pulled away immediately, and in that moment of skin against skin, James felt more alive than he had in 3 years. Maya jerked her hand back as if she'd been burned, her eyes wide with something that looked like panic. "I should go," she said quickly, gathering her papers with hands that shook slightly. "Thank you for the coffee. It was really sweet of you and Lily." "Maya." "Wait," James started, but she was already standing. "I'll see you around," she said, avoiding his eyes as she hurried toward the door. James watched her go, his hands still tingling from her touch, his heart racing with possibilities and fear in equal measure. Lily returned to find him staring at the cafe door, his coffee growing cold. "Where did Miss Maya go?" she asked, climbing back into her chair. "She had to leave," James said, still looking at the door as if he could will Maya to come back through it. "Did you ask her on a date?" Lily asked with the casual directness that only children possessed. "What?" James turned to stare at his daughter. "Why would you ask that?" "Because you look at her the way Prince Eric looks at Ariel in my movie like. She's the most beautiful thing in the whole world." Lily stirred her hot chocolate thoughtfully. "Mommy would want you to be happy, Daddy. She told me so." James's heart clenched. "When did she tell you that?" "In my dreams," Lily said simply. "She visits sometimes and tells me things. She said someday you'd find someone who would love us both, and then our family would be complete again." As they walked back to the car, James couldn't shake the feeling that Sarah was somehow orchestrating this from wherever she was now. The thought should have felt like a betrayal, but instead, it felt like a blessing that scared him more than anything else. Because if Sarah was somehow behind this, if Maya was meant to be part of their lives, then running away from these feelings wasn't just cowardice. It was denying fate itself. Chapter 3. Unexpected Bonds. 5 days after the coffee shop encounter, James's carefully ordered world fell apart with a single phone call. "Mr. Hart." His assistant Karen's voice carried unusual panic. "I've been calling Mrs. Thompson for 20 minutes. Lily's school called she has a fever and needs to be picked up immediately." James's hands stilled on his keyboard. Mrs. Thompson, their longtime nanny, was visiting her sick sister in Denver and wouldn't return until tomorrow. The merger documents spread across his desk suddenly seemed insignificant compared to his 8-year-old daughter burning up with fever in the nurse's office. "I'll be right there," he said, already grabbing his jacket. But as he raced through midday traffic, panic clawing at his chest, James's mind went to the one person who had shown Lily such genuine care. Before he could second-guess himself, he was dialing the number he'd gotten from the school's emergency contact list. "Hello?" Maya's warm voice made his shoulders relax for the first time since Karen's call. "Maya, it's James Hart. I'm sorry to bother you, but Lily is sick at school, and my nanny is out of town. I know this is presumptuous, but where do you need me?" she interrupted. And James's heart clenched at the immediate concern in her voice. "You don't have to, James." Her voice was gentle but firm. "Where do you need me?" 40 minutes later, James paced his penthouse living room while Maya sat on the edge of Lily's bed, singing softly through the open bedroom door. He watched her dampen a washcloth with cool water and gently press it to his daughter's flushed forehead. The sight made his chest tight with unexpected emotion. "She's sleeping," Maya whispered, appearing in the doorway like an angel in a simple yellow dress that made her skin glow. "Fever's down to 101. She just needs rest and fluids." "Thank you," James said, his voice rougher than intended. "I don't know what I would have done without. You would have figured it out," Maya said simply. "That's what parents do." She moved past him toward the kitchen, and James caught a whiff of her scent vanilla and something floral that made him want to bury his face in her neck. He followed her, mesmerized by the graceful way she moved through his space, as if she belonged there. "You don't have to stay," he said, though every cell in his body hoped she would. I can take it from here. Maya turned from where she was filling a glass with water, one eyebrow raised. When was the last time you took care of a sick child, James? He ran a hand through his hair, realizing he looked completely out of his depth. Sarah usually handled the sick days. Something soft and understanding flickered across Maya's face. Then consider this a learning experience. Besides, she asked for me specifically when she woke up earlier. James's heart did that dangerous flipping thing again. She did? She said I make the best sick day soup. Maya opened his refrigerator, frowning at the takeout containers and expensive wine. Though I'm going to need to work with what you have here. When was the last time you grocery shopped? Mrs. Thompson. Usually. James stopped, realizing how that sounded. I'm not completely helpless. I just work a lot. I can see that, Maya said. But there was no judgment in her voice. She moved around his kitchen with surprising efficiency, pulling out ingredients for what looked like the beginning of soup. Tell me about your work. What exactly does a CEO do all day? As Maya cooked, James found himself talking more freely than he had in years. He told her about building his software company from nothing, about the current merger that could triple their value, about the pressure of being responsible for hundreds of employees and their families, but mostly, he watched her the way she hummed under her breath while chopping vegetables, the graceful efficiency of her movements, the way she tasted the soup, and made a pleased little sound that sent heat straight through him. You're staring, Maya said without turning around, though he could hear the smile in her voice. Can you blame me? The words slipped out before James could stop them. Maya stilled, her hand frozen on the wooden spoon. Slowly, she turned to face him, and the air between them crackled with unspoken desire. James, she said softly, and his name on her lips sounded like a prayer. He moved toward her without conscious thought, drawn by a force stronger than logic or caution. She didn't step away, and when he reached up to tuck a curl behind her ear, she leaned into his touch. I can't stop thinking about you, he confessed, his thumb tracing the curve of her cheek. For 5 days, you've been in my head, and I can't figure out if that makes me crazy or the sanest I've been in years. James, Maya's breath hitched as he stepped closer, until they were sharing the same air. Tell me you feel it too, he whispered, his forehead resting against hers. Tell me, I'm not imagining this connection between us. Before Maya could answer, Lily's weak voice drifted from the bedroom. Miss Maya, I'm thirsty. They sprang apart like guilty teenagers, both breathing hard. Maya's cheeks were flushed, her lips slightly parted, and James had to grip the kitchen counter to keep from pulling her back into his arms. I'll check on her, Maya stammered, practically fleeing the kitchen. James leaned against the counter, his heart pounding. What was he doing? He barely knew this woman, and yet being near her felt like coming home after a long journey. The responsible part of his brain, the part that had kept him safe for 3 years, screamed warnings about moving too fast, about risking his heart again. But the rest of him, the part that had been dormant since Sarah's death, was finally waking up. The afternoon passed in a haze of domestic intimacy that terrified and thrilled James in equal measure. Maya fed Lily soup and read her stories, her voice soothing and melodic. She helped James understand when to give medicine and when to just offer comfort. Most dangerously, she made his sterile penthouse feel like a home. As evening approached, Lily finally fell into a peaceful sleep. James and Maya stood in his living room, the city lights twinkling beyond the floor-to-ceiling windows, and the weight of everything unsaid hung between them. I should go, Maya said quietly. But she made no move toward the door. Should you? James asked, moving closer. Or do you want to go? What I want and what I should do are two very different things, she whispered. What do you want, Maya? She looked up at him then, her brown eyes dark with desire and fear. I want to stay. I want to pretend that this, she gestured between them, isn't the most terrifying thing I've ever felt. I want to believe that maybe, just maybe, I could be enough for someone like you. James's heart shattered at the vulnerability in her voice. Someone like me? Successful, wealthy, sophisticated everything. I'm not. You're right, James said, and watched pain flicker across her face before he continued. You're not those things. You're better. You're genuine and warm and kind. You care more about my daughter after knowing her for a week than some people in my social circle care about anything real. You're not enough for someone like me, Maya. You're too good for me. Before she could protest, James cupped her face in his hands. But I'm selfish enough to want you anyway. The kiss was inevitable. They'd been building toward it since that first electric moment in the school hallway. When their lips met, James felt like he'd been struck by lightning. Maya tasted like sweetness and possibility, like everything he'd been missing without knowing it. She melted against him, her hands fisting in his shirt as he deepened the kiss. 3 years of numbness, of going through the motions of living, shattered in the space of a heartbeat. This was what it felt like, to be alive again. When they finally broke apart, both breathless, James rested his forehead against hers. "Stay," he whispered against her lips. "Please stay." But even as Maya's eyes fluttered closed, even as she swayed toward him like a flower toward sunlight, James could see the fear creeping back in. "I can't," she breathed, stepping back. "This is too much, too fast. I need time to think." She gathered her purse with shaking hands, avoiding his eyes. At the door, she paused. "Thank you for trusting me with Lily today," she said softly. "Take care of her, and James, take care of yourself too." The door closed behind her with a soft click, leaving James alone with the lingering scent of vanilla and the taste of possibilities on his lips. From down the hall, Lily called sleepily, "Daddy, is Miss Maya coming back tomorrow?" James closed his eyes, his heart still racing from that kiss. "I don't know, Princess. I really don't know." But as he tucked Lily back into bed and watched her peaceful face, James made himself a promise. He was going to fight for this, for Maya, for the family they could be Togathervan if it scared him senseless. Chapter 4. Hearts in Conflict. The flowers arrived at Roosevelt Elementary on Tuesday morning. 3 dozen white roses arranged in a crystal vase that probably cost more than Maya's monthly car payment. The card was simple. "Thank you for taking care of us both. James." Maya stared at the arrangement on her desk, her heart racing as her second graders whispered excitedly about their teacher's fancy flowers. She'd spent the weekend trying to convince herself that what happened in James's penthouse was a mistake, a moment of weakness brought on by the intimate circumstances of caring for his sick daughter. But the roses made it impossible to pretend that kiss hadn't changed everything. "Miss Maya, are those from your boyfriend?" asked Sophie, no James's Sophie, but 8-year-old Sophie Carter, who had a gap-toothed grin and insatiable curiosity about adult relationships. "They're from a friend," Maya said carefully, though her fingers trembled as she touched one perfect petal. "Must be a really good friend," piped up Ethan, and Maya's cheeks burned as she remembered the feel of James's lips against hers. The way he'd whispered, "Stay," like a prayer against her mouth. The flowers were followed by thoughtful gifts that showed James had been paying attention to every word she'd said. A first-edition copy of The Nightingale arrived on Wednesday. She'd mentioned it was her favorite novel. Thursday brought a gift certificate to the art supply store, where she told him she bought materials for her classroom projects. Friday's delivery was the most dangerous of all. A small potted orchid in her favorite shade of purple, with a note that read, "Something beautiful for someone beautiful." Each gift chipped away at her resolve, but it was the Saturday morning phone call that nearly undid her completely. "Miss Maya." Lily's sweet voice made Maya's heart clench instantly. "Daddy said I could call you if I promised to be quick." "Hi, sweetheart. How are you feeling?" "All better. Daddy made me chicken soup for breakfast because he said that's what you would do." Lily paused, and Maya could picture her little face scrunched in concentration. "Miss Maya, do you like my daddy?" Maya nearly dropped the phone. "What kind of question is that, honey?" "The important kind, because he likes you a lot. He gets this dreamy look when someone says your name, and he keeps checking his phone like he's waiting for you to call. Tell me, I like you too more than anyone except Daddy. You make him happy, and you make me feel safe. And I think maybe you could be part of our family if you wanted to be." Tears stung Maya's eyes. "Sweetheart, it's complicated. Adults always say things are complicated when they're really just scary," Lily said with 8-year-old wisdom. "But scared doesn't mean bad. Daddy taught me that." After Lily hung up, Maya sat in her small apartment, surrounded by James's gifts, and forced herself to confront the truth she'd been avoiding. She was falling in love with him, had probably been falling since that first electric moment in the school hallway. But love terrified her in ways she couldn't articulate, even to herself. Her phone buzzed with a text from her best friend Tara. "Coffee now. You've been hiding from me for a week." An hour later, Maya found herself sitting across from Tara in their usual cafe, trying to explain feelings that defied explanation. "So let me get this straight," Tara said, stirring her latte with more force than necessary. "This gorgeous, wealthy single father is courting you, like something out of a romance novel. His daughter adores you, and you're running scared because men like James Hart don't end up with women like me," Maya said quietly. "Not permanently, maybe for a while, when it's exciting and different, but eventually they remember who they are and where they come from. "That's Nathan talking, not you," Tara said sharply. "That bastard did a number on your self-worth. But honey, you are not him, and from what you've told me, James isn't either." Maya wanted to believe her friend, but the voice in her head, Nathan's voice, unfortunately whispered all the reasons why this couldn't work. James lived in a penthouse that probably cost more than she'd make in 10 years. He traveled in circles where her teacher's salary would be pocket change. Eventually, the novelty would wear off, and he'd realize what everyone in his world would be whispering, that he could do better. "I need more time," Maya said finally. But James, it seemed, was determined not to give her time to overthink herself out of this. Sunday brought the most romantic gesture of her life. Maya arrived at Roosevelt Elementary to grab some supplies for Monday's lesson plans, only to find the school's front courtyard transformed. Fairy lights twinkled from every tree, and a blanket was spread on the grass, surrounded by battery-powered candles and pillows. James sat in the middle of it all, wearing jeans and a casual sweater that made him look younger, more approachable, devastatingly handsome. "What is this?" Maya asked, her heart hammering against her ribs. "A picnic," James said, standing to greet her. "I figured if you won't come to dinner with me, maybe you'd let me bring dinner to you somewhere that feels safe." He'd thought about her comfort, chosen a place where she felt confident and in control. The gesture was so thoughtful, it made her chest ache. "James, I told you I needed time, and I'm not trying to rush you," he said, holding up his hands. "I just want to spend time with you. No pressure, no expectations, just us." The picnic was perfect Thai food from her favorite restaurant, wine that wasn't too expensive to make her uncomfortable, and conversation that flowed as easily as breathing. James told her about his childhood, growing up middle class before building his fortune from nothing. Maya shared stories about her students, her dreams of opening her own learning center someday. As the sun set and the fairy lights grew brighter, they lay on their backs, looking up at the stars, barely visible through the city's glow. "Can I ask you something?" James said, turning on his side to face her. "Okay, what are you really afraid of? Because I don't think it's just about money or social differences. There's something else." Maya was quiet for so long that James probably thought she wouldn't answer. When she finally spoke, her voice was barely above a whisper. "I'm afraid of not being enough again." She turned to meet his eyes. "Nathan spent 2 years systematically tearing down my confidence, making me believe that everything I wanted, marriage, children, a real partnership, was asking too much. When he left, I promised myself I'd never again put my heart in someone's hands who might decide I wasn't worth keeping." James's eyes blazed with something fierce and protective. "I would never, you don't know that," Maya interrupted gently. "6 months from now, when the novelty wears off and your friends and family start questioning what you're doing with a public school teacher, you might feel differently." James sat up abruptly, running his hands through his hair in frustration. "So what? I'm guilty before I've even done anything wrong. I'm paying for Nathan's sins?" "It's not about paying for anything. It's about protecting myself." "From what? From being happy? From being loved?" James's voice cracked on the last word. "Because I do love you, Maya. I know it's crazy and too fast and probably terrifies you, but I love you." The words hung between them like a bridge Maya was afraid to cross. She could see the truth in his eyes, feel it in the way he looked at her like she was precious beyond measure. But love hadn't been enough to keep Nathan faithful, hadn't been enough to make him see her worth. Before she could respond, the first drops of rain began to fall. They gathered their things quickly, but by the time they reached James's car, they were both soaked. As they sat in the heated interior, rain drumming on the roof, the tension between them reached a breaking point. "Maya," James said, reaching for her hand. When she turned to look at him, her breath caught. His hair was damp from the rain, his eyes dark with desire and something deeper. Without thinking, she leaned toward him, and then his hands were cupping her face, and his mouth was on hers. This kiss was different from their first, hungrier, more desperate. 3 weeks of fighting their attraction exploded into passion that left them both breathless. James's hands tangled in her wet hair, and Maya could taste the rain on his lips, feel the barely leashed power in his touch. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Maya rested her forehead against his. "This is insane," she whispered. "Completely," James agreed, pressing soft kisses to her jaw. "But I'd rather be insane with you than sane without you." The words were so beautiful, so exactly what her heart needed to hear, that Maya almost gave in, almost let herself believe that this time could be different. Instead, she pulled back, panic flooding her system as reality crashed over her. "I can't," she said, her voice breaking. "I'm sorry, James, but I can't do this." She was out of the car and running through the rain before he could stop her, leaving James alone with the taste of her kisses and the sound of his heart breaking as Maya fumbled with her keys at her apartment door, tears mixing with rainwater on her cheeks. She wondered if she was making the biggest mistake of her life. But some risks, she told herself, were too dangerous to take, even if the alternative was spending the rest of her life wondering what might have been. Chapter 5. Walls Come Down. For a week, James respected Maya's request for space, even though it nearly killed him. He threw himself into work with single-minded determination, staying at the office until midnight to avoid going home to an apartment that still smelled faintly of vanilla and unfulfilled promises. But concentration proved impossible when every coffee cup reminded him of her laughter. Every glimpse of yellow made him think of the dress she'd worn while caring for Lily. It was Lily who finally broke his resolve. "Daddy, why don't we see Miss Maya anymore?" she asked over breakfast on Saturday morning, her amber eyes, so like Sarah's, filled with confusion and hurt. James's heart clenched. "She's been busy, Princess. Did you make her mad? You look sad, and she hasn't called me back." Lily's lower lip trembled, and James realized his own heartbreak had been affecting his daughter too. "No, sweetheart. Adults sometimes have complicated feelings. I miss her," Lily interrupted, and the simple statement shattered what remained of James's self-control. "She made us feel like a real family again, like maybe Mommy sent her to take care of us." The innocent words hit James like a physical blow. Sarah, in all his confusion over Maya, he'd almost forgotten the promise he'd made to his dying wife, that he'd find happiness again, that he'd give Lily the complete family she deserved. James found himself in his home office, pulling out the box of Sarah's personal belongings he'd been unable to go through since her death. His hands shook as he lifted out her leather journal, the one she'd written in religiously every night before bed. He'd never been able to read it before the grief had been too raw, the invasion of her private thoughts too painful. But something compelled him now, some instinct that the answers he needed lay somewhere in these pages. James flipped through months of entries about daily life, Lily's milestones, their shared dreams, but it was an entry from 8 months before her death that made his blood run cold with shock. "Attended the education charity gala tonight while James worked late again. Met the most extraordinary woman, a teacher named Maya Ellis. I got her card when she asked about Lily's school needs. She spoke so passionately about loving all children equally, about being the stable force in their chaotic worlds. When she talked about her students, her whole face lit up, like she was discussing her own children. Something about her reminded me of myself at that age, but with a strength I never had. I found myself thinking, if something ever happens to me, I pray James finds someone like her, someone with a heart big enough to love both him and Lily completely, someone who understands that being a mother isn't about biology. It's about choice every single day." The journal slipped from James's nerveless fingers. Sarah had met Maya at a charity event, and somehow, impossibly, had written about her as if she knew, as if she'd been preparing him even then for the woman who would eventually heal their broken family. His hands trembling, James read the entry again, then searched frantically through the rest of the journal. "Can't stop thinking about that teacher from the gala. There was something about Hera warmth, a strength. The way she talked about nurturing children who weren't hers spoke to something deep in my soul. I keep having this strange feeling that she's important somehow, that our paths will cross again. I've started praying that if I'm not here to see Lily grow up, maybe someone like her will be someone who understands that love multiplies rather than divides." James sank into his chair, overwhelmed by the impossibility of it all. Sarah had known Maya, had somehow sensed that she would be important to their family's future. The woman he'd been falling in love with wasn't a betrayal of his late wife's memory. She was Sarah's gift to them. By the time Lily woke from her nap, James had made his decision. "Get your shoes, Princess. We're going for a drive." Maya's apartment building was modest, but well-maintained, with flower boxes under every window and children's laughter echoing from the playground behind it. James's heart hammered as he climbed the stairs to the 3rd floor, Sarah's journal clutched in his hands like a lifeline. He knocked before he could lose his nerve. When Maya opened the door, she looked like she'd been crying. Her eyes were red-rimmed, her natural curls pulled back in a messy bun, and she wore old yoga pants and an oversized sweater that somehow made her more beautiful than any designer dress could have. "James." Her voice was with surprise, and something that might have been hope. "What are you doing here?" "I need to show you something," he said, holding up the journal. "Can we come in?" Maya's gaze dropped to Lily, who immediately wrapped her arms around Maya's waist in a fierce hug. "I missed you so much, Miss Maya." "I missed you too, sweetheart," Maya said, her voice thick with emotion as she stroked Lily's hair. Over the child's head, her eyes met James's. "Come in." Her apartment was small but warm, filled with books and plants and photographs of her students. Everything about it screamed home in a way James's sterile penthouse never had. "Tell me, why don't you look at Miss Maya's books while we talk?" James suggested. And his daughter happily settled on the floor with a stack of picture books. Maya perched on the edge of her couch, her hands twisted in her lap. "James, if you came here to try to change my mind, Sarah knew you," he said without preamble, and watched all the color drain from Maya's face. "What?" James sat beside her, careful not to crowd her but close enough to see every emotion that crossed her features. "She met you at a charity gala 6 months before she died. She wrote about you in her journal, too. Remember meeting someone named Sarah at an education fundraiser, but I had no idea she was your wife," Maya whispered. "There were so many people that night." "She remembered you," James said, opening the journal to the first entry he'd marked. "She wrote about you specifically. Can I read this to you?" Maya nodded, her eyes wide with shock. As James read Sarah's words aloud, tears began streaming down Maya's cheeks. When he finished the first entry, she pressed her hands to her mouth, sobbing quietly. "There's more," James said gently, and read the second entry about Sarah's prayers and hopes for their future. When he finished, Maya was crying so hard she could barely speak. "I don't understand. How is this possible?" "I don't know," James admitted, setting the journal aside and taking her hands in his. They were cold and trembling. "Maybe Sarah had some kind of intuition. Maybe it's just an incredible coincidence. Or maybe—" He paused, hardly believing he was about to say this. "Maybe some things are just meant to be." Maya looked up at him through her tears. "You really believe that?" "I believe that I've spent 3 years feeling dead inside, and then I walked into an elementary school and saw you comforting a crying child. And for the first time since Sarah died, I felt alive again." James cupped her face in his hands, his thumbs brushing away her tears. "I believe that Lily lights up like Christmas morning whenever she talks about you. I believe that Sarah would have loved you because she saw in you exactly what I see. Someone with enough love to heal our broken family." "James," Maya whispered. But he wasn't finished. "I believe that love isn't about replacing what we've lost. It's about building something new, while honoring what came before. Sarah didn't send you to take her place, Maya. She sent you to help us become whole again." The kiss was inevitable, but different from all the others they'd shared. This wasn't about passion or desire, though both burned between them. This was about recognition, about two broken pieces finally understanding they were meant to fit together. "I love you," Maya whispered against his lips, the words torn from somewhere deep in her soul. "I've been so scared, but I love you so much. It terrifies me." "I love you too," James said, resting his forehead against hers. "Both of you. More than I ever thought possible." From across the room, Lily's voice interrupted their moment. "Are you guys done being sad now? Because I think we should be a family." James and Maya broke apart, laughing through their tears as Lily approached with a picture book in her hands. "Actually, Princess," James said, pulling Lily onto his lap while keeping one arm around Maya, "I think we already are." That night, after Lily fell asleep in Maya's bed, surrounded by stuffed animals and fairy tale books, James and Maya lay together on her couch, talking in whispers about the future they'd been too afraid to imagine. "This is really happening," Maya said, her head on James's chest, listening to the steady rhythm of his heartbeat. "Are you okay with that?" James asked, pressing a kiss to the top of her head. Maya lifted her face to look at him, and James saw no more fear in her eyes, only love and hope in the beginning of something beautiful. "I'm more than okay," she said, reaching up to trace the line of his jaw. "I'm home." When James kissed her this time, it was with the promise of forever, with the blessing of a woman who had loved them both enough to bring them together across time and space. And for the first time in 3 years, James' heart believed in miracles again. Chapter 6. Building Dreams. 3 weeks later, Maya's life had transformed into something from a fairy tale she wouldn't have dared to dream. Every morning, she woke in James's arms, sometimes in his penthouse, sometimes in her modest apartment, but always wrapped in a love so complete, it still amazed her. James couldn't seem to keep his hands off her, stealing kisses when she made coffee, pulling her close during Lily's soccer games, showing her every night how precious she was to him. "You're staring again," Maya murmured, not lifting her eyes from the papers she was grading at James's kitchen island. "Can't help it," James said, moving behind her chair to nuzzle her neck. "You're beautiful when you're concentrating. Actually, you're beautiful all the time. But especially when you get that little wrinkle between your eyebrows." Maya laughed, tilting her head to give him better access to the sensitive spot behind her ear. "I'm trying to work, Mr. Hart. I can think of better ways to spend Sunday morning." James murmured against her skin, his hands sliding down to rest on her waist. "Daddy, Miss Maya, you're being gross again," Lily announced from the living room, where she was building an elaborate castle with her Legos. "We're not being gross, we're being romantic," James called back, making Maya giggle. "Same thing," Lily said with 9-year-old authority. "Can we go to the park later? I want to show Miss Maya my new soccer moves." "Of course, sweetheart," Maya said, her heart swelling with love for this child who had become hers in every way that mattered. Lily had started calling her almost Mama 2 weeks ago, and every time she heard it, Maya wanted to cry from happiness. The integration into James's world had been surprisingly smooth, though not without its challenges. His friends and business associates had been polite, but clearly surprised by his choice in partner. Maya could read the questions in their eyes at the charity galas and business dinners she now attended by his side. What does a tech CEO see in a public school teacher? How long will this last? But James never seemed to notice the whispers or the subtle condescension. He introduced her with fierce pride, his hand always at the small of her back, his eyes never leaving her face when she spoke. When someone made a comment about her noble profession with thinly veiled disdain, his response was swift and uncompromising. "Maya shapes the minds of the next generation," he'd said coolly at last week's corporate mixer. "She's probably done more to change the world than anyone in this room, including me." The turning point came on a Tuesday evening when James surprised her by picking her up from school with a photographer in tow. "What's this about?" Maya asked as they walked hand in hand through downtown, pausing occasionally for the photographer to capture candid moments. "You'll see," James said mysteriously, his eyes sparkling with mischief. The mystery was solved the next morning when Maya opened the city's largest newspaper to find a full-page spread titled "The Heart Behind the Success." The article featured beautiful photos of them together, James looking at her like she hung the moon, Maya laughing at something he'd whispered, both of them clearly, radiantly in love. But it was James's words in the accompanying interview that made Maya's heart stop. "People ask me what I see in Maya Ellis, as if being a teacher somehow makes her less worthy of love than someone with a trust fund or a corner office. What I see is a woman who chooses to love other people's children as fiercely as her own. What I see is someone who finds joy in finger painting and playground laughter, who believes every child deserves to feel special. She's taught me that success isn't about what you accumulate, it's about how many lives you touch." Maya doesn't just teach children, she changes their entire world. She changed mine too. Some people think I could do better than a public school teacher. I think I got incredibly lucky that someone as extraordinary as Maya was willing to take a chance on a workaholic single father who'd forgotten how to live until she reminded him, "She's not just the love of my life. She's made me a better man and a better father." If that's not success, I don't know what is. Maya had cried reading it, overwhelmed by the public declaration of his love and the way he'd defended not just her, but her profession and her worth. When her principal saw the article, she'd framed it and hung it in the school's main office. Maya's students thought it was the most romantic thing they'd ever seen. But the article also brought unwanted attention. Photographers began following them, and gossip blogs speculated about their relationship with varying degrees of cruelty. The scrutiny made Maya self-conscious in ways she hadn't expected, especially when unflattering photos appeared online, accompanied by comments about her appearance, her clothes, her obvious gold-digging motivations. "Ignore them," James said fiercely when he found her reading particularly nasty comments on her phone. "They don't know you. They don't know us. But they're saying things designed to get clicks and sell magazines." James interrupted, taking her phone and setting it aside. "None of it matters, Maya. The only opinions that matter are ours, Lily's, and the people who actually love us." He was right, but it still stung especially when she attended a gallery opening with James and overheard two socialites speculating about how long it would take him to come to his senses. The breaking point came at a charity auction for children's literacy, an event that should have been perfect for Maya, given her passion for education. She dressed carefully in a vintage dress James had bought her, feeling confident and beautiful, until she walked into the ballroom and felt the weight of 100 judging stares. "You look nervous," James murmured in her ear as they found their table. Just adjusting, Maya said, trying to smile. The evening went downhill quickly. During the silent auction, Maya accidentally bid on an item she couldn't afford, not understanding the sophisticated bidding process. The embarrassment burned her cheeks as James quietly outbid her to save face. Later, when she tried to contribute to a conversation about private school fundraising, her comments about public education needs were met with polite but dismissive smiles. The final straw came when she excused herself to the restroom and overheard a conversation between two women touching up their makeup. She's pretty enough, I suppose. But really, what could they possibly have in common? He'll get bored once the novelty wears off. Give it 6 months. The other woman agreed. Men like James Hart don't settle for girls like that permanently. He's just having his rebellious phase. Maya stood frozen in the bathroom stall, their words confirming every insecurity she'd been fighting. When she finally emerged, the women had gone, but their poison remained. She made it through the rest of the evening by sheer force of will, but James noticed her silence on the drive home. "What's wrong?" he asked as soon as they were alone in his penthouse. "Nothing," Maya said, but her voice cracked on the word. "Don't lie to me." James cupped her face in his hands, his hazel eyes dark with concern. "Talk to me." The whole story poured out the overheard conversation, her growing insecurities, her fear that everyone might be right about their fundamental incompatibility. When she finished, James was quiet for a long moment. "Do you trust me?" he asked finally. "Of course." "Then trust this." James pulled out his phone and scrolled to something he'd apparently been working on for weeks. "I was going to surprise you with this next week, but I think you need to see it now." On his screen was a website for the Maya Ellis Learning Center, a fully funded educational foundation designed to provide resources and support for underfunded public schools. The mission statement brought tears to Maya's eyes. To ensure every child receives the love, attention, and educational opportunities they deserve, regardless of economic background. "James," she whispered, scrolling through pages of detailed plans, budgets, and programs. "I've been working with lawyers and education consultants for weeks," he said. "This isn't charity, Maya. This is investment in our future, yours, mine, and thousands of children's. I can't let you do this for me." "You're not letting me do anything," James interrupted, pulling her into his arms. "We're building this together. Equal partners in everything. This is what I want to do with my money, with my life. Make something that matters with the woman I love." That night, they made love with a passion that was both desperate and tender, a claiming of each other that went beyond physical desire. As James worshipped her body with his hands and mouth, whispering endearments against her skin, Maya finally understood what it meant to be truly cherished. "I love you," she gasped as he moved within her, their bodies perfectly synchronized after weeks of learning each other's rhythms. "I love you too," James replied, his voice rough with emotion. "Forever, Maya. Whatever comes, we face it together." Later, as they lay tangled in his sheets, Maya traced patterns on James's chest and marveled at how her life had changed. "Are you happy?" James asked, pressing a kiss to the top of her head. "Completely," Maya said, and meant it, "though I think I need to learn to stop reading comments online." James laughed, the sound rumbling through his chest. "Probably a good idea. The internet is not kind to beautiful, successful, accomplished women who make bitter people feel inadequate. Is that what I am? Successful and accomplished?" "Maya Ellis," James said, tilting her chin up to meet his eyes. "You're the most successful person I know. You measure success by how many lives you change for the better. By that standard, you're running circles around everyone else." As sleep claimed them, wrapped in each other's arms with the city lights twinkling beyond the windows, Maya finally believed she deserved this happiness. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new whispers, new tests of their love. But tonight, she was exactly where she belonged, in the arms of a man who saw her worth and loved her, not despite her differences from his world, but because of them. They were building something beautiful together. One day at a time. Chapter 7. Storms and Sanctuary. The storm began with a phone call that came at 6:47 a.m. on a Tuesday morning, shattering the peaceful quiet of James's penthouse, where Maya lay curled against his chest, her hair spread across his shoulder like silk. "James Hart," he answered, groggy, one arm still wrapped protectively around Maya. "Mr. Hart, this is Detective Carter with the Portland Police Department. We need you to come down to the station immediately. There's been an allegation made against your company regarding data theft and corporate espionage." The words hit James like ice water. He sat up so quickly that Maya stirred, her sleepy eyes opening in concern. "I'm sorry, what?" There must be some mistake. No mistake, sir. We'll need you here within the hour. And I'd recommend bringing your lawyer. After James hung up, his hands shaking, Maya wrapped her arms around him from behind, pressing soft kisses to his shoulder. What's wrong? She whispered against his skin. Someone's accusing my company of stealing proprietary software from a competitor, James said. His mind already racing through the implications. This could destroy everything I've built. The next weeks passed in a blur of lawyers, investigations, and 18-hour days as James fought to prove his company's innocence. The stress was overwhelming, not just the potential financial ruin, but the possibility that hundreds of employees could lose their jobs because of false accusations. Maya tried to be supportive, bringing him dinner at the office and listening patiently as he ranted about legal strategies and evidence collection. But James could see the strain in her eyes. The way she tried to hide her hurt when he canceled their weekend plans for the third time in a row. I'm sorry, he said one night, finding her asleep on his couch, still wearing her teaching clothes, a stack of papers to grade scattered around her. I know I've been impossible lately. You're under incredible stress, Maya said softly, making room for him beside her. I understand, but understanding and feeling connected were two different things, and James could feel the distance growing between them, even as he fought desperately to save his company. The situation exploded into complete chaos when Nathan Caldwell walked into Roosevelt Elementary on a Thursday afternoon. Maya was cleaning her classroom after school when she heard his voice behind her, smooth, familiar, and unwanted. Hello, beautiful. She spun around, her heart lurching at the sight of her ex-husband leaning against her doorframe like he belonged there. Nathan looked exactly the Samtall, conventionally handsome, with the kind of practiced charm that had once swept her off her feet before revealing the manipulation underneath. What are you doing here? Maya asked, her voice steadier than she felt. Can't a man visit his ex-wife? Especially when she's been making such interesting headlines lately. Nathan stepped into her classroom, his eyes taking in the children's artwork with obvious disdain. Dating a billionaire CEO, Maya? I have to admit, I'm impressed, though I wonder if he knows what he's really getting. You need to leave, Maya said, moving toward her desk where her phone lay. Now. Oh, come on, don't be like that. I just wanted to talk. Maybe catch up over dinner for old time's sake. Nathan's smile was all surface charm, but his eyes were calculating. I've been following your little fairy tale romance in the gossip blogs. Very entertaining. There's nothing to catch up on. We're divorced, Nathan. Have been for over 2 years. Yes, but that was before you upgraded your circumstances so dramatically. Nathan moved closer, and Maya caught a whiff of his expensive cologne, the same scent that used to make her feel safe and now made her nauseous. I have to say, I didn't think you had it in you. Finding yourself a rich man to take care of you. Very smart. It's not like that, Maya said sharply. Isn't it? Come on, Maya, a public school teacher and a tech billionaire. What could you possibly have in common besides the obvious? Nathan's tone was mocking, hitting every insecurity she'd been fighting. Though I suppose when you look like you do, common interests aren't really necessary. Get out. Maya's voice was ice cold now. Get out of my classroom and stay away from me. I'm just saying, when this little fantasy of yours falls apart, and it will, because men like James Hart don't settle for women like you, permanently, you'll remember that someone who really knows you is still out there. Nathan left his business card on her desk before walking out, leaving Maya shaking with anger and something dangerously close to doubt. That night, when James came home after another marathon day with lawyers, he found Maya unusually quiet. She'd made dinner but barely touched her own plate, instead pushing food around while staring into space. Everything okay? James asked, though his own mind was spinning with legal strategies and damage control. Nathan came to see me today, Maya said quietly. James's fork clattered against his plate. Your ex-husband? What did he want? To catch up, Maya said, with air quotes. He basically implied that I was using you for your money, and that you'd eventually come to your senses and leave me for someone more appropriate. Fury blazed through James's chest. I hope you told him to go to hell. I told him to leave, Maya said. But James, what if he's right? What if everyone's right? Look at us. You're drowning in work stress, barely speaking to me except to apologize for being unavailable. Maybe we're kidding ourselves thinking this can work. You're not serious. James stared at her in disbelief. Maya, I'm going through a crisis right now that could destroy my company. That doesn't mean I love you any less. But when will it end? There will always be another crisis, another merger, another emergency that requires all your attention. I'm just a distraction from your real life." "That's not true," James said. But even as he spoke, his phone buzzed with another urgent message from his legal team. He glanced at it automatically and saw hurt flash across Maya's face. "Isn't it?" she asked quietly. Their first real fight erupted from there, passionate and painful, fueled by weeks of stress and the poison Nathan had planted with his visit. James accused Maya of not trusting their relationship enough to weather difficult times. Maya accused James of taking her for granted, of expecting her to be endlessly patient, while he prioritized everything else over their relationship. "Maybe you're right," James said finally, his voice rough with exhaustion and hurt. "Maybe I'm not capable of being the partner you deserve. Maybe I'm too damaged, too focused on work to ever be truly present for someone I love." "Maybe we both are," Maya replied, tears streaming down her face. "Maybe I'm too insecure, and you're too unavailable. And we're both just fooling ourselves." James left that night, ostensibly to stay at a hotel closer to his lawyer's office, but really because he couldn't bear to see the doubt in Maya's eyes. As he lay alone in an anonymous hotel room, staring at the ceiling, he wondered if everyone had been right from the beginning. Maybe love wasn't enough to bridge the gap between their worlds after all. Meanwhile, Maya curled up in her empty apartment, clutching one of James's shirts that still smelled like his cologne, and questioned everything she thought she knew about love, trust, and whether she was strong enough for a relationship that required her to weather storms she'd never imagined. Outside, thunder rolled across the city, and rain began to fall like tears from a broken sky. The perfect storm had arrived, threatening to wash away everything they'd built together. But storms, Maya would remember later, also clear the air for new beginnings. The question was whether they'd both be brave enough to weather this one together, or if they'd let fear and doubt destroy the most beautiful thing either of them had ever found. As lightning illuminated the darkness, both James and Maya lay awake in their separate beds, hearts breaking and hoping in equal measure, wondering if love could truly conquer all, or if some obstacles were simply too high to climb. The night stretched endlessly before them, full of questions that only morning could answer. But one thing was certain: the fairy tale was over. Now came the real test of whether their love was strong enough to survive in the harsh light of reality. Chapter 8. Truth and Trust. James's salvation came from the most unexpected source. His 9-year-old daughter. 3 days after the devastating fight with Maya, James sat in his hotel room at 2 a.m., surrounded by legal documents and empty coffee cups. When his phone rang, Lily's name on the caller ID sent panic through his chest. "Princess, what's wrong? Why are you awake?" "I had a bad dream," Lily said, her voice small and shaky. "You and Miss Maya were fighting, and then she went away forever, and you were sad again, like when Mommy died." James's heart clenched. "Sweetheart, it was just a dream, but you're not home, and Miss Maya hasn't called me in 3 days, and Mrs. Thompson says you're working too much again." Lily's voice cracked with tears. "Did you make her go away, Daddy?" "It's complicated, Princess. Adults always say that when they mess up something good," Lily interrupted with 9-year-old wisdom that cut straight to his heart. "Miss Maya loves us. Daddy real love, like Mommy did, and you're being stupid if you let her go." After the call ended, James stared at his reflection in the hotel room's mirror and saw a man who'd become exactly what he'd sworn he'd never be again. Someone who chose fear over love, work over family, safety over the terrifying beauty of opening his heart completely. The corporate espionage charges were dropped the next morning when video evidence surfaced proving James's company's innocence. The relief should have been overwhelming. But all James felt was hollow emptiness. He'd won the battle for his company, but lost the war for his soul. It was Mrs. Thompson who delivered the final wake-up call. "That girl loves you," she said bluntly when James returned to his penthouse that evening. "More than I've seen anyone love anything in my 40 years of watching families. And you love her just as much, which makes your current stupidity even more tragic." "Mrs. Thompson, don't Mrs. Thompson me, James Hart. I watched you die inside when Sarah passed. Watched you go through the motions of living without actually being alive. Then this beautiful teacher walks into our lives, and suddenly you're laughing again, playing with your daughter again, being the man I remember." She fixed him with a stern glare. "If you throw away the best thing that's happened to this family because you're scared, then you deserve to be miserable." That night, James sat in Lily's room, watching her sleep, and made the most important decision of his life, He was going to fight for Maya not with lawyers or business strategies, but with his whole heart laid bare. The next evening, Maya arrived at Roosevelt Elementary to find the front doors propped open despite the late hour. Confused and slightly worried, she made her way through the familiar hallways toward her classroom, guided by a soft golden glow emanating from the direction of her room. What she found took her breath away. Her classroom had been transformed into something from a fairy tale. Hundreds of white roses filled every available surface, favorite flowers that she'd mentioned once in passing months ago. Battery-powered candles flickered on every desk, casting dancing shadows on the walls. Delicate fairy lights hung from the ceiling like captured stars. And in the center of it all, James knelt beside a small table, set with Sarah's journal, open to the page where his late wife had written about Maya. "James," Maya whispered, her heart hammering against her ribs. "What is this?" He stood slowly, and she could see tears glistening in his hazel eyes. "This is where we met," he said, his voice rough with emotion. "This is where my life started over, where I learned to breathe again. I wanted to come back to the beginning and tell you something I should have said from the start." James picked up Sarah's journal with reverent hands. "Sarah wrote about you before we ever met. She saw something in you that I recognize now. A soul capable of loving completely, without reservation, without fear. She prayed that if something happened to her, I'd find someone exactly like you." "James," Maya breathed, stepping closer despite herself. "But here's what I didn't understand until this week," James continued, his eyes never leaving her face. "Sarah didn't send you to replace her. She sent you to complete something that was always meant to be. Our family wasn't broken when she died. It was just waiting for you to make it whole." Tears streamed down Maya's cheeks as James set the journal aside and moved toward her. "I'm scared," he admitted, his hands trembling as he reached for her. "I'm terrified of losing you the way I lost her. So scared that I almost lost you anyway, by being exactly the kind of man who doesn't deserve your love, distant, unavailable, taking you for granted." "You didn't take me for granted," Maya whispered. "Yes, I did. I got so caught up in protecting my company that I forgot to protect what really matters. Us, you, the family we're building together." James cupped her face in his hands, his thumbs brushing away her tears. "I choose you, Maya, over everything else, over fear, over safety, over the opinions of people who don't matter. I choose us. But what about the next crisis? The next time work demands everything from you? Then we face it together," James said firmly. "No more hotels, no more shutting you out, no more pretending that my problems aren't ours to solve as a team. I want a real partnership with you in business, in life, in everything." From his pocket, James pulled out a small velvet box that made Maya's breath catch. "This was Sarah's grandmother's ring," he said, opening the box to reveal a stunning vintage diamond that seemed to capture all the candlelight in the room. "Sarah specifically asked me to keep it for the woman who would love both James and Lily completely. She knew even then that she was keeping it for you." James dropped to one knee among the roses and fairy lights, and Maya's world tilted on its axis. "Maya Ellis, you walked into my life when I thought my heart was dead and buried. You showed me that love doesn't diminish when it's shared. It multiplies. You love my daughter like she's your own. You challenge me to be better than I ever thought possible. And you make me believe in miracles again." His voice cracked with emotion. "Will you marry me? Will you let me spend the rest of my life proving that you're the most precious thing in my world?" "Yes," Maya sobbed, dropping to her knees to meet him among the candles and roses. "Yes, yes, 1,000 times yes." The ring slipped onto her finger like it had always belonged there, and when James kissed her, it was with 3 years of grief transformed into joy, fear conquered by love, and the promise of forever burning between them. "I love you," Maya whispered against his lips. "I'm sorry I doubted us. Doubted you. Nathan's poison got into my head. Nathan was wrong about everything," James said fiercely. "You're not with me for my money. I'm with you because you make me a better man, a better father, a better human being. And anyone who can't see that isn't worth our time." They made love that night, surrounded by roses and candlelight, on the floor where their daughter's teacher had first captured hearts with finger paints and infinite patience. It was desperate and tender, passionate and healing, a claiming of each other that went beyond the physical to something spiritual. "This is where it all began," Maya murmured afterward, her head pillowed on James's chest as they lay wrapped in his suit jacket among the scattered petals. "No," James said, pressing a kiss to her hair, "this is where it begins. Everything before this was just preparation for the life we're going to build together." From down the hallway came the sound of small footsteps, and Lily appeared in the doorway, wearing her pajamas and misses. Thompson's guilty expression behind her. "Did she say yes?" Lily asked hopefully. "She said yes," James confirmed. Sitting up and pulling Maya with him, Lily launched herself into their arms, and as the three of them sat among the roses in the classroom where love had first bloomed, Maya felt the last of her fears dissolve. They were going to be a family, not perfect, but real. Not without challenges, but strong enough to face whatever came together. And somewhere in the candlelit shadows, Maya could swear she felt Sarah's presence warm and approving, blessing the love that would carry them forward into their beautiful, complicated, perfectly imperfect future. "Welcome to the family. Almost Mama," Lily whispered. And Maya's heart overflowed with a joy so complete, it felt like flying. Finally, she was home. Chapter 9. Before the Dawn. The engagement announcement appeared in the society pages on a Sunday morning, accompanied by a stunning photo of James and Maya at the literacy gala, her new ring catching the camera's flash like captured starlight. The headline read, "Tech Mogul James to Wednesday Elementary School Teacher in Real-Life Fairy Tale." For 48 hours their world felt perfect. Congratulations poured in from friends and colleagues. Lily spent the weekend planning her flower girl dress, and Maya couldn't stop staring at Sarah's beautiful ring on her finger, marveling at how it felt like a blessing from beyond. Then, Tuesday's headlines destroyed everything. "Teacher's dirty secret. What James Hart's fiancé doesn't want you to know," screamed across the front page of the city's most notorious tabloid. Below it, a heavily doctored photo showed Maya in what appeared to be a compromising position with Nathan, alongside a fabricated quote. She called him boring but bankable, the perfect sugar daddy to upgrade her lifestyle. Maya's hands shook as she read the vicious article that painted her as a calculating gold digger who had manipulated a grieving widower into proposing. The lies were so elaborate, so seemingly credible, that for a moment she wondered if even she would believe them if she didn't know the truth. The story claimed she'd been secretly meeting with Nathan throughout her relationship with James, that she'd disparaged James's parenting to friends, that she'd boasted about landing the biggest fish in the city. Each lie was more devastating than the last, designed to destroy not just her reputation, but the trust she'd built with James and Lily. Her phone rang constantly, reporters wanting comments, former colleagues expressing shock, strangers hurling abuse. By noon, photographers had surrounded Roosevelt Elementary, forcing the school into lockdown and traumatizing her young students. "Miss Maya, why are those people taking pictures of our school?" asked 7-year-old Ava during lunch, her eyes wide with confusion and fear. "It's nothing you need to worry about, sweetheart," Maya said, but her voice cracked despite her efforts to stay calm. The final blow came when she overheard two parents in the hallway. "I don't care if she's innocent. I don't want my child in a classroom that's become a media circus. This is exactly the kind of drama we pay private school tuition to avoid." Principal Johnson called her into his office that afternoon, his face grave with concern and regret. "Maya, you know how much we value you here," he began, and her heart sank. "But the media attention is disrupting the entire school. Parents are calling. The school board is asking questions, and I'm afraid we need to put you on temporary leave until this situation resolves itself. But my students will be taken care of." "I'm sorry, Maya, truly. But we have to think about the children's welfare first." Walking out of Roosevelt Elementary that day felt like a death. The school had been her sanctuary, her purpose, her identity for 6 years. Now it was just another place she was no longer welcome. James found her that evening sitting on her apartment floor, surrounded by newspapers and laptop printouts of the online stories that had multiplied like a virus throughout the day. "Maya," he said, kneeling beside her, "I'm so sorry. My lawyers are already working on this. We'll sue them for libel, demand retractions, it doesn't matter," Maya said quietly, not looking up from the papers. "The damage is done. Even if we prove these are lies, people will always wonder if there's some truth to them. Your business partners, your friends, Lily's classmates' parents, they'll all remember this. I don't care what anyone thinks, but I do," Maya said, finally meeting his eyes. "I care that your daughter might grow up hearing whispers about her stepmother being a gold digger. I care that your reputation is being damaged because of me. I care that every business deal you make, every social event you attend, people will be wondering if you're the fool who got taken in by a scheming teacher." James's face was fierce with protective anger. "None of that matters to me. What matters is us, our family." "What if it starts to matter?" Maya asked, voicing the fear that had been growing in her chest all day. "What if 6 months from now, when this keeps following us, When every milestone in our lives gets overshadowed by this scandal, you start to wonder if everyone was right. What if you start to resent me for bringing this chaos into your carefully ordered world? That will never happen. You can't know that, Maya said, standing and beginning to pace. James, I lost my job today. My students, who I love more than anything except you and Lily, are being exposed to a media circus because of me. How long before this affects Lily's school? Your company? Everything you've worked to build? As if summoned by her words, James's phone rang. He glanced at it and grimaced his head of PR, calling for the 4th time that day. Take it, Maya said. Please. I know you need to handle this. James stepped into the hallway to take the call, and Maya could hear fragments of the conversation. Stock prices. Investor confidence. Damage control. When he returned, his face was carefully neutral, but she could see the strain around his eyes. Everything okay? She asked, though she already knew the answer. Some of our investors are concerned about the negative publicity. It's nothing that won't blow over in a few weeks. James, stop. Maya held up her hand. Don't minimize this for my sake. Tell me the truth. James sank onto her couch, suddenly looking older than his 35 years. 3 major clients have requested meetings to discuss the situation. My board wants an emergency meeting tomorrow, and... He paused, pain flickering across his features. Crestwood Academy called. Some parents are concerned about Lily being associated with the scandal and want to know how the school plans to address it. The words hit Maya like physical blows. It was worse than she'd imagined. The poison wasn't just spreading to her life, it was threatening everything James held dear. This is exactly what I was afraid of, she whispered. We'll get through this, James said, reaching for her hands. Together. I don't care how long it takes or what it costs. But what about Lily? What about your employees who depend on your company staying strong? What about everything you've built? Maya pulled her hands away, her heart breaking with every word. James, I love you more than I've ever loved anything in my life, which is exactly why I can't let you sacrifice everything for me. You're not a sacrifice. Aren't I? Maya's voice cracked. Look around, James. Look at what loving me has cost you in just one day. And this is only the beginning. As long as we're together, as long as I'm wearing your ring, this will follow us. Every achievement you make, every milestone in Lily's life, will be overshadowed by tabloid speculation about whether I'm really good enough for you. James stood, his face disparate. Maya, please don't let them win. Don't let lies and manipulation destroy the best thing that's ever happened to us. I'm not letting them win, Maya said, tears streaming down her face as she slowly slipped Sarah's ring from her finger. I'm protecting the man I love and the little girl who deserves better than this. No, James's voice was raw with panic. No, Maya, please, we can fight this. We can. You can fight this, Maya said, holding out the ring with a shaking hand. Without me complicating everything, without me being the weakness your enemies can exploit. You're not my weakness, James said desperately. But he didn't take the ring. You're my strength, my reason for everything. Then trust me enough to let me protect you, Maya whispered. The way you protected me when Nathan tried to hurt me. Sometimes love means knowing when to step back. The ring sat between them on her coffee table, catching the lamplight like a fallen star. I need time to think, Maya said finally, to figure out how to fix this without destroying everything you've worked for. Please, James, give me that. James stared at her for a long moment, his hazel eyes swimming with tears and a grief that matched her own. If you walk away now, he said quietly, if you let fear make this decision for us, then Nathan and those tabloids will have won anyway. They'll have taken away the only thing that really matters. After he left, Maya sat alone in her apartment, staring at the ring and wondering if love was supposed to hurt this much. Outside, photographers still waited, ready to capture her next move, her next mistake. She thought about Sarah's words in the journal, about finding someone with a heart big enough to love both James and Lily completely. But what happened when that love became the very thing that threatened to destroy them? As night fell over the city, Maya faced the most impossible choice of her life. Fight for a love that might cost everything, or walk away from the only family she'd ever truly wanted. The ring sparkled accusingly in the lamplight, a promise she wasn't sure she was strong enough to keep. But one thing was certain: whatever she decided would change all their lives forever. The question was whether she had the courage to believe that love really could conquer all, or if she would let fear write the ending to their fairy tale before it had truly begun. Chapter 10. Love Conquers All. James didn't sleep for 3 days while Maya had disappeared from her apartment. Mrs. Thompson reported she'd left with a single suitcase, refusing to say where she was going. James worked around the clock with his team of investigators and lawyers to uncover the truth behind the tabloid attack. The breakthrough came from an unexpected source, Nathan Caldwell's bitter ex-girlfriend, who contacted James's lawyers with evidence that Nathan had orchestrated the entire campaign in partnership with Pinnacle Tech, James's biggest business rival. Security footage showed Nathan meeting with Pinnacle executives. Text messages revealed plans to destroy the teacher's reputation, and financial records proved payment for the fabricated photos and false quotes. But even with irrefutable proof of the conspiracy, James knew vindication wouldn't be enough. He needed to do something bigger, something that would not only clear Maya's name but show the world exactly what she meant to him and what people like her meant to everyone. "I need you to call a press conference," James told his PR team on Thursday morning, "and I need you to contact every major media outlet in the city. What I'm about to do will either save my relationship or end my career, but either way, the world needs to hear it." Meanwhile, 200 miles away, Maya sat on the porch of her childhood home, watching her mother tend the small garden that had always been her sanctuary. She'd been hiding here for 3 days, ignoring her phone and breaking her heart a little more each time Lily's voice appeared in her voicemail. "You know running away isn't solving anything," her mother said gently, settling into the chair beside her daughter. "I'm not running away. I'm protecting them," Maya replied, though her voice lacked conviction. "Protecting them from what? From love? From happiness?" Her mother reached over and took her hand. "Sweetheart, I've watched you your whole life put everyone else's needs before your own. You did it with Nathan until he crushed your spirit, and now you're doing it again. But sometimes the most loving thing you can do is fight for what you want. You don't understand, Mama. The whole world is saying I'm a gold digger, that I'm using him. And you know that's not true. James knows that's not true. That beautiful little girl knows that's not true. So why does it matter what strangers think?" Before Maya could answer, her phone rang. It was Mrs. Thompson. "Turn on Channel 7 News right now," the older woman said without preamble. "Your man is about to do something either very brave or very stupid, and I suspect you'll want to see it either way." Maya's heart lurched as she grabbed the remote. On the television screen, James stood behind a podium in what looked like his company's conference room, facing a crowd of reporters. He looked exhausted but determined, and when he began to speak, his voice carried the weight of a man betting everything on love. "Good afternoon. I've called this press conference to address the recent allegations against my fiancée, Maya Ellis, and to make several announcements that I believe will clarify the situation for everyone involved." Maya's breath caught as James held up a thick folder of documents. "First, I want to present irrefutable evidence that the tabloid stories about Miss Ellis were completely fabricated as part of a coordinated attack by my business competitor, Pinnacle Tech, in partnership with Maya's ex-husband, Nathan Caldwell. These documents include security footage, financial records, and recorded conversations that prove this was a deliberate attempt to damage both my company and the woman I love." The room erupted with questions, but James held up his hand for silence. "However, proving the stories were lies isn't why I'm here today. I'm here because I want to tell you who Maya Ellis really is, and why the attack on her character represents an attack on some of our society's most valuable people." James's voice grew stronger, more passionate as he continued. "Maya Ellis is a public school teacher who has spent 6 years of her life nurturing children that society has often forgotten. She works 60-hour weeks for a salary most people in this room wouldn't consider adequate tip money. She spends her own money on school supplies, stays late to tutor struggling students, and has never met a child she didn't believe deserved love and attention." Maya's eyes filled with tears as James's voice cracked with emotion. 2 months ago, I made a mistake that put my daughter in the wrong school for a single day. That mistake led me to Maya, who dropped everything to care for a stranger's child with the same devotion she shows her own students. She didn't know who I was or what I could do for her. She just saw a little girl who needed comfort and a father who needed help, and she opened her heart to both of us." James paused, looking directly into the main camera as if he could see Maya through the lens. "The people attacking Maya's character want you to believe that teachers like her are somehow less valuable than CEOs like me. They want you to think that choosing to dedicate your life to education instead of accumulating wealth makes you an easy target for their lies. But I want to tell you what Maya Ellis has given me that all my money never could." His voice broke completely then, and Maya saw tears streaming down his face. She gave me back my daughter's laughter. She gave me back my capacity for joy. She took a man who was just going through the motions of living and reminded him what it feels like to be alive. She loved my child like her own before she ever knew if I could love her back. That's not gold digging. That's the kind of pure, selfless love that makes someone rich in every way that actually matters. The room was completely silent now, reporters hanging on every word. Which brings me to my second announcement, James continued, his voice steadying with resolve. Effective immediately, I'm stepping down as CEO of Heart Technologies to focus on the Maya Ellis Learning Center, a foundation dedicated to supporting public education and teachers like the woman I love. I'm liquidating half my personal assets to fund educational programs in underserved communities because Maya has taught me that true success isn't measured by what you accumulate, it's measured by how many lives you touch. Gasps echoed through the room, but James wasn't finished. My third announcement is this. Maya Ellis, I know you're watching. I know you gave back my ring because you thought you were protecting me, but the only thing I need protection from is a life without you in it. You're not my weakness. You're my strength. You're not a burden. You're my blessing. And if you'll have me, I want to spend the rest of my life proving that the only opinion that matters is yours, mine, and that of the little girl who needs us both. James pulled Sarah's ring from his pocket, holding it up to the camera. This ring has been waiting for you for 3 years, just like I have. Sarah's grandmother passed it down with the instruction that it should only go to a woman capable of loving completely, without reservation, without fear. That's you, Maya. It's always been you. The press conference dissolved into chaos as reporters shouted questions, but James simply walked away from the podium, leaving his words to echo in the stunned silence. Maya sat frozen on her mother's porch, tears streaming down her face as the magnitude of what James had just done hit her. He'd risked everything, his career, his reputation, his financial security, not to defend her, but to honor all teachers, all people who chose service over wealth. Well, her mother said quietly, I think that answers the question of whether he loves you enough to fight for you. 6 hours later, James found her exactly where he'd hoped she'd be, sitting by the small lake behind her childhood home, watching the sunset paint the water gold. He'd driven through the night to get there, following directions from her mother, who'd answered the door with knowing eyes and pointed him toward the water. You gave up your company, Maya said when he settled beside her on the old wooden dock, not looking at him but feeling his presence like warmth against her skin. I gave up a job, James corrected. I found a purpose. James, you didn't have to. Yes, I did. James turned to face her, his eyes intense with conviction. I had to show you that you're more important to me than any board position or business deal. I had to show the world that people like you teachers, caregivers, the people who actually make society function deserve to be celebrated, not torn down by tabloids and jealous ex-husbands. Maya finally looked at him, and James's heart clenched at the love and wonder in her tear-filled eyes. The learning center, you really named it after me? It was always going to be named after you, James said, reaching into his pocket for the ring. Just like this ring was always meant for you. Just like I was always meant to find you in that elementary school classroom. What about the scandal? What about already forgotten? James interrupted. Turns out, when you expose a corporate conspiracy and announce you're dedicating your life to education, people stop caring about tabloid lies pretty quickly. 3 universities have already offered you teaching positions, and the mayor wants to give you the key to the city. James took her left hand in his, and Maya didn't pull away. But none of that matters if you don't want to take a chance on us again. If you don't believe that love can survive anything the world throws at it. I've always believed in love, Maya whispered. I just stopped believing I deserved it. You deserve everything, James said fiercely, sliding the ring back onto her finger where it belonged. You deserve a man who will fight for you, protect you, choose you every single day. You deserve a daughter who lights up when you walk in the room. You deserve a life filled with purpose and passion, and the kind of love that makes everything else fade away. I love you, Maya said, the words coming from the deepest part of her soul. I love you so much it terrifies me, but I'm tired of letting fear make my decisions. Then marry me, James said, cupping her face in his hands. Tomorrow, next week, whenever you're ready, marry me. And let's build the life Sarah dreamed for us. The life we were always meant to have. Their kiss was soft and sweet, and full of promises, tasting of tears and hope, and the kind of love that really could conquer all. As the sun set over the lake where Maya had spent her childhood dreaming of fairy tales, She realized that the best stories weren't about princesses being rescued. They were about two broken people choosing to heal each other, one day at a time. 5 years later, Maya stood in the doorway of their backyard, one hand resting on her growing belly, watching James push their 4-year-old son, Oliver, on the swing while Lily, now 14 and beautiful, helped their neighbors' children with homework at the picnic table. The Maya Ellis Learning Center had grown beyond their wildest dreams, providing resources and support to dozens of schools across 3 states. James had found his true calling in education advocacy, and together they'd built something that would outlast any corporate merger. "Mama Maya," Oliver called, waving from his swing. "Watch me go high." "I'm watching, baby," Maya called back, her heart full to overflowing. She'd kept her maiden name professionally, but became Mrs. Hart in every way that mattered, not because she needed James's name, but because she wanted to share it, to be part of the family they'd built together through choice rather than chance. "You're thinking too hard again," James said, appearing beside her with grass stains on his shirt and love in his eyes. "Just thinking about how different everything is from 5 years ago," Maya said, leaning into his embrace. "Better different or worse different?" James asked, pressing a kiss to the top of her head. "Perfect different," Maya said, turning in his arms to face him. "Though I think Sarah would be proud of what we've built." "I think she's watching over all of us," James agreed, his eyes soft with memory and gratitude, making sure we don't forget that the best love stories aren't about perfect people, they're about imperfect people who choose to love perfectly. As their children's laughter filled the evening air and the first stars appeared in the darkening sky, Maya whispered a quiet thank you to the woman who had somehow known exactly what their family needed to be complete. Love, she'd learned, wasn't about finding someone who completed you. It was about finding someone who inspired you to complete yourself and then choosing to build something beautiful together one day, one choice, one act of love at a time.